a great person from a material estimation perspective, he was totally subservient to their senses. And from a spiritual perspective, someone who can control their senses is really a controller and is a powerful person. And that person develops a lot of strength. And people are attracted by such a person whose character is very strong, who has a genuine character. That is very, very attractive. And they command a lot of respect, and they have a lot of influence and spiritual power. One who can control their senses. Everyone else is simply controlled by their senses, and they're just using others to fulfill their objectives. And such a life is a very miserable life in which we are controlled by our senses. So all of us are controlled by our senses, and we are being dragged by our senses. But if we analyze objectively, that is a very miserable life. We are being pushed, like we are being pushed to go here, go there, do this, do that. So here it's mentioned that even great political leaders, social heroes, they think I've conquered my enemy, but in reality, they are controlled by their senses, right? And there's this pastime of Rupa Goswami, which I've heard from senior Vaishnavas, that Rupa Goswami, as we know in his a Dabir Khas, aka Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami was Dabir Khas, as people these days say in my previous life. What they refer to is in this life, when they say previous life. So he was he a prime minister or a finance minister? Prime minister. So finance minister. So Rupa Goswami was the finance minister, such a great post. And Rupa Goswami, one time, he was being carried in a palanquin, like Maharaj Rahugana was. So Rupa Goswami was being carried in a palanquin in the dead of night. And he was going to see the king. The king, Nawab Hussain Shah, had summoned him. So he was going to see the king in the dead of the night on a palanquin, being carried by palanquin carriers. And then as he was passing somebody's house, it was very quiet, he heard something. So this person who was inside the house, he heard someone going on a palanquin, and he heard somebody. He said either it must be a prisoner, somebody is being taken as a prisoner, or it's a servant of the king going out there. And when Rupa Goswami heard this, he had this realization, though we know Rupa Goswami is a great Acharya, out of his humility, he thought that I'm simply a prisoner, I'm simply a servant of the king, and I'm shackled in these golden chains. So a prisoner is shackled by iron chains, and here I am shackled by these golden chains, and I'm going at the order of the king, right? I'm subservient, though I'm thinking that I'm the controller. So out of his humility, he thought like that. He's a great Vaishnava. We should never think that he was controlled by senses. No way. And Rupa Goswami, he worked for Nawab Hussain Shah. We know that, right? So Rupa Goswami, the pastime was how he ended up working for Nawab Hussain Shah. One time, Nawab Hussain Shah, he was building a great tower. A tower, yeah. So he came to see the construction of the tower. And the stonemason who was working on the tower, he came and told Nawab Hussain Shah, this is a great tower, it looks very beautiful, but I can make you something better. So this stonemason worked on that tower. And the king was infuriated by this stonemason. He said, why didn't you do a good job on this tower? Why didn't you make it very nice? So the Nawab Hussain Shah took the stonemason at the top and he pushed him down. And he killed him. So he was thrown from such a height and then he died. And then Nawab Hussain Shah, he summoned his secretary. So the Secretary of State came and he said, go to Ramakeli. So he told, go to Ramakeli, and as he was about to give him the instruction as to the purpose of going to Ramakeli, he got distracted by something else. Some messenger came and he got distracted. And then the Secretary of State thought, now, he's told me to go to Ramakeli, and if I just stand here with a blank face, I might be, pushed over the tower. I might be next. So he was scared of the king. And then he said, okay. He thought, I'll just go to Ramakeli and then figure out what to do. So he went to Ramakeli clueless. And he was walking up and down. And there Rupa Goswami saw him. And he asked him, what are you doing here? Why are you just walking up and down without any purpose? He said, the king has sent me here to Ramakeli, but I don't know why he has sent me. And he said, okay, so what happened? And then the Secretary of State, he narrated to Rupa Goswami what took place. And he said, out of fear of being thrown over the tower, I came here. So Rupa Goswami said, the king actually wants, he is sent you here to find a stonemason, a very good stonemason. So then he takes a very good stonemason with him back to the king. And Nawab Hussain Shah, he says, okay. He said, I've got you this stonemason. He said, oh, how did you know I wanted a stonemason? He said, I knew. He said, no, you're not that smart. He said, tell me, who guided you? Who told you that? And he said, actually, this person by the name Rupa Goswami told me. He said, get him here. So Rupa Goswami was summoned. And then Nawab Hussain Shah also thought that if I get Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami here, in my kingdom I have a lot of Hindus. So from a political perspective, it's good to put a Hindu in a powerful position. So he thought of all these things, and he thought this is a very smart person. So then he gave them the post of Rupa Goswami, Finance Minister, Dabir Khas, and Sakar Malik, Sanatan Goswami as the Prime Minister in Nawab Hussain Shah's reign. So they were given these very powerful posts. And we know that Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, they were always absorbed in the hearing and recitation of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. In fact, their home was a replica of Vrindavan. So in their home, they had got a landscape done. That landscaping job was, they replicated Vrindavan. So Govardhan Hill, Radhakund, Shamkund, everything was there. Like these days also, you can get a landscaper and they tell you, we'll give you this style. Or we'll give you maybe Balinese style or this style, that style. So they said, we want Vrindavan style. That's what they had. And then they were always absorbed in the recitation of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And Bhagavad Katha was taking place there. And Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami would write letters to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, asking to, if maybe, I think their letters was, they always wrote letters to Mahaprabhu, but Mahaprabhu, they would never get a response. And one time they got a response. It was a cryptic response. And Mahaprabhu wrote that, if a wife has a lover other than a husband, the wife serves a husband very nicely, but always meditates on the lover. So then they understood that they have to keep on doing their duties as the finance minister and the prime minister till the right time comes. And then one time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to Ramakeli on his way to Vrindavan. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with these millions of followers. And Nawab Hussain Shah was a Muslim king. He had forbidden any Hindu performances in his state because he was a Muslim. He said only, I don't know if he had Sharia law or whatever, so he said only Muslim performances can take place, no Hindu performances. And then Mahaprabhu came doing open Sankirtan. Harinams were going on large scale with millions of people. So there was a huge uproar in the town. And then Nawab Hussain Shah obviously knew about it. Then he sent Keshava Khan, who was a devotee, and he said, find out what's happening and tell me who's Mahaprabhu. Tell me who's this personality. He's got millions of people here. And then Keshava Khan, he came back with a report. And in the report, Keshava Khan thought to himself, if I disclose to him the identity of Mahaprabhu, he will want to harm Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he's a Muslim king. So then he told Nawab Hussain Shah, this is just a sannyasi who has come here to beg with his millions of followers. But the king was smart. He said, are you trying to tell me not to take him seriously? And this is just an ordinary person? And Nawab Hussain Shah, he said that, I'm a great king, I pay people so much money, they still don't do what I tell them to do. I'm paying them so much money, they still don't do what I ask them to do. And here these are sannyasi, and they all are volunteers, and they've dedicated their lives unto him. And he said, this can be none other than Allah or your Rama or Krishna in the Vedas. So Nawab Hussain Shah, he had that realization. And then he summoned Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, and he asked them, what is the identity of this person? And they said, he's Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's the Supreme Lord, and all your wealth is his mercy. And the king was okay. But still, Sri Chaitanya, Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami knew that the king is very cruel, and he can change his mind at any moment. Like Narad Muni, after counseling Kamsa, Kamsa decided to free Vasudeva and Devaki, but he knew that the Kamsa is a very demoniac person. Anytime his mind can change. So like that, Nawab Hussain Shah, Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami knew that his mind can change any moment. So they went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with a straw in their mouth, and they offered their dandavats out of great humility. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to ask them to get up. They were prostrated for a long time. And they asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to, because he was on his way to Vrindavan. And they said, don't go with such a large number of followers and leave Ramakeli because you're in harm's way. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he went back to Puri, I think, right? Or kept Vrindavan. He went back. He went back to Puri. Yeah, so he went back to Puri. 3 attempts. And then, but then Mahaprabhu asked Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami to retire. So now their time had come, and Rupa Goswami had to flee the kingdom of Nawab Hussain Shah. So he went into exile. So he had a large amount of money, a lot of gold. He distributed half to the Vaishnavas. The other half, the remaining of the 50%, 25% he distributed to his family, and other he kept for personal emergency. And then he took off. So Nawab Hussain Shah was infuriated that Rupa Goswami has left his service. And then Sanatan Goswami stopped showing up for his job. So he was the prime minister, and the prime minister was not doing his job. He was not showing up in the parliament. He was not showing up on Spring Street. So, or Parliament House, whatever was the equivalent back then in his kingdom. So he was not showing up, and then Nawab Hussain Shah was infuriated, and he personally went to their house to see what's going on. And the excuse was given, I'm sick. It was a Sikhi excuse, sick leave. So he said, how long can you be sick, whatever. And he went there, and he barged in, opened the door, and then he saw then there's Bhagavad Katha going on. And then he was furious, and he said, and Sanatana Goswami said, do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to work for you. I'm just going to, I've retired. And then Sanatana Goswami was thrown in prison. So when he was thrown in prison, he spoke to the janitor or the guard, whatever, and he said, look, can you let me out? I'll give you some, I have a gold coin, I have some gold, you take this. And he said also, you let me go, take this gold, I want to go to Makkah for pilgrimage. And the jailkeeper, he was a Muslim, he said, okay, yeah, Makkah, you want to go to Makkah, right? Go then. But he actually wanted the money, as we know. So he got his bribe, and Sanatana Goswami was released. And then we know the past. He escaped then to Vrindavan, and they met Mahaprabhu at Varanasi. Yeah, so they met Mahaprabhu at Varanasi, and then they were instructed by the Lord over there. So Rupa Goswami had that realization that I am controlled by this king, though, Rupa Goswami is a great saint. In this way, we all are controlled by our senses, though we are thinking that we are the master, but we are controlled. And here in the verse, we are being encouraged to follow the path of the sannyasis, of the renounced order. Right? So we are encouraged to follow the path of the sannyasis. So that doesn't mean take sannyas. So a sannyasi is one who is in the highest social order. They renounce their family and their wealth, their prestige, everything, and they're engaged in the service of the Lord. So there's two types of sannyasis. There's the impersonal sannyasi, and then there is the personal sannyasi, the Vaishnava sannyasi and the impersonal sannyasi, the Ekadandi and the Tridandi. So sannyas means one-pointed focus. That's what sannyas means. Focus on the Supreme, one-pointed focus, nothing else. So that's what is being encouraged, that we have to follow the path of the sannyasis. So now most of us are grihasthas. I think everyone in this room is, I can see all, I can't see any brahmacharis or sannyasis. There's kids and families, so we all are, or some single men. We all are more or less in the householder ashram. And so for us, what does sannyas mean? For us, sannyas means one-pointed attention unto the service of Krishna. That's what is sannyas. And Krishna talks in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. So our swadharma, our real dharma is to render service to Krishna, right? So when we engage our senses in the service of the master of the senses, Rishikesha, Rishikena, so Krishna is Rishikesh, Krishna is the master of the senses. So all our senses are under the control of the Supreme Lord. Everything belongs to Krishna. All our wealth, our talents, our body, our mind, our words, our possessions, everything is Krishna's energy. And when it is engaged, when our senses are engaged in Krishna's service, in the service of the master of the senses, then our senses get purified. And in that way, we don't fall prey to the senses. And in that way, we purify our attachments. So we all have various attachments, right? All of us have attachments. So here it's mentioned that political and social heroes. So we are also trying to be, politically and socially powerful in our own way. We are also looking for social acceptance. We work very hard, 5 days a week or 7 days a week, for that paycheck, in order to have a house, right? Have a car. So not any ordinary house, but a nice house in a respectable suburb, and a respectable car. So all that we are doing for social acceptance, right? So we are doing these things to be socially accepted, to be maybe politically accepted, to be politically powerful. We are aspiring for so many things. But if we engage our possessions in Krishna's service, in the service of the master of the senses, then they get purified. And slowly, our attachments get purified. So we all have attachments, but we have to purify them. And that's what sannyas is about. So we can be in the householder life, we can be in the householder ashram, but if we engage our possessions in the service of Krishna, then slowly we get purified. Slowly or quickly, depending on the application. We get purified. So in practical terms, that means if we are making some money through a business or a job, to use that money in various spiritual Krishna conscious activities. So either you can start your own, like some devotees I know, they have Bhaktivedanta programs. So they are dovetailing the attachment of their house, that nice house, by using it in Krishna's service. Right? They're opening their space to let other people in, to give them an opportunity to hear. And using their wealth to facilitate that program. And also to facilitate the spread of the Krishna consciousness movement by donating to various causes. So like this temple is run. A temple requires money and manpower. So we give our time, we give our energy by doing some service, and then we can give our wealth to the temple, or we can give to various other projects that are taking place. So what we are inspired by, we donate to those causes. Or you can start your own project or your own program. So in this way, we dovetail we engage our wealth in Krishna's service. In that way, we practically demonstrate that everything belongs to Krishna by this practical engagement in Krishna's service. So that is the Vaishnava that is a Vaishnava sannyasi. So the Vaishnava way of purifying our senses is to engage it in Krishna's service. And the impersonal way of sannyas is to detach oneself from matter artificially. That's what they do. So the Mayavadi or impersonalist sannyasis, they simply engage in the study of Vedanta. So Vedanta is the main literature. So there's Advaita Vedanta, there's different Vedantas, different Acharyas have given, all of the Acharyas, main Acharyas, have given a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, like Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya also, right? So everyone has given. Vidyabhushan, yeah. So the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam by the author of the Vedanta Sutra, Vyasadeva. So the impersonalist sannyasis, they generally engage in the study of the Vedanta and they refrain from all other activities. But that study is very dry. Even study of the Vedas that is devoid of glorification of Krishna is dry. And Vyasadeva, when he compiled all the Vedas, he was despondent. So Vyasadeva, out of his compassion, he foresaw the conditions of Kali Yuga, and then he compiled the 4 Vedas. Vyasadeva, then he compiled the Mahabharata for the 3 Vaishyas and Dvija Bandhus, right? He compiled the Mahabharata. he compiled the Vedanta Sutra. And after all that, he divided the one Veda into 4. After all that, he was not satisfied. He was despondent. And Narad Muni, he pointed out the cause of his despondency, which was insufficient glorification of the Lord. And then Vyasdev, he compiled the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which contains abundant glorification of Krishna. And in all the Puranas he compiled, there wasn't sufficient glorification of Krishna. There was some glorification, but not sufficient. So even Vyasdev was despondent. What to speak of others? So the impersonalist way of sannyas is to refrain from material activities. And sometimes people, when they get frustrated in material life, because all of us get frustrated, in due course we will get frustrated. But when people get frustrated, what do they say? I'm just, for them spirituality means not to do anything. Is to basically more or less renounce. And this is people's conception of spirituality. Right? They think I'm coming, spiritual life means you just sit and do meditation. Meditate on the ingoing, outgoing, go for a Vipassana retreat and do some meditation, just focus on the candle. This is the meditation for people. But after a Vipassana retreat, what happens? For 1 week or 10 days, in the West, Vipassana retreat is very popular. So they'll go 10 days, not talk to each other, take a Mauna Vrat. And then after that, back to business as usual, BAU. Back to business as usual. So again, talking all sorts of nonsense and eating all sorts of nonsense food. They come back to their usual activities because it is not possible to refrain the senses. And Krishna talks about that in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He says that you cannot control your senses artificially. You need to have a higher taste, and in that way, you can control the senses. So, Krishna consciousness means to engage in the higher taste, in the activities of the higher taste. So for us, we all are transcendentalists, we all are yogis. And for us, yoga means to practically engage our senses in active devotional service. That is yoga for us. That is bhakti yoga. Not simply doing some asanas and some mindfulness or some meditation. It is to practically engage your senses all day in service. So by chanting the holy names in the morning, chanting the Maha Mantra, 16 rounds, and then doing some service. Most of us are working, so we are working 40 hours a week or so. Then one might think, how is that service if I'm going to work, if I'm going to an office, and there's no talk of anything spiritual. There's no talk of Krishna. All you're talking about is how to further the objectives of that organization. And that is your soul, samadhi, and meditation. All day. You have to be absorbed and show you're in samadhi. Otherwise you won't get hired. Or otherwise you won't be retained, right? You have to show I'm fully absorbed in your mission. And they want that level of surrender. So one might think that how is that Krishna conscious? How is that Krishna consciousness? But if we go to work to be able to live a Krishna conscious lifestyle, and also to be able to give it to others by using those resources, then that activity becomes spiritualized. Then it has a spiritual focus. Otherwise it is very mundane. It's not exciting, but then at least it becomes maybe tolerable. And by doing that, by doing these practical activities of chanting, of going to work, and then taking up some service in the temple, or helping with some preaching activity, either doing it yourself or contributing to it in one way or the other. And in that way we purify our senses. We are able to control our senses and purify our various attachments that we have. And slowly they get purified and we become Krishna conscious. So I'll leave it there. You have any questions? Yes, Matari.
What percentage of the possessions we should start engaging in Krishna service, and to what level should we take it so that we achieve sannyas being in a household?
Yeah, good question. So to what degree of our possessions should we engage in Krishna service? Well, there's no set answer. It just depends on one's individual circumstances. I mean, the ideal I'm talking about, is what Rupa Goswami set out. 50% of your earnings are dedicated to spiritual activities. Now, that might not be practical for everyone in today's context. So you have to see according to one's own circumstances. Everyone earns different amounts of money, right? And we also, and let's face it, we also attach to it on top of it. We are attached to how much we want to give to Krishna. We want to give as little as possible and get as most, in return, get the most amount of blessings. So we have that conditioning, but you have to just see what you're inspired by. What project you're inspired by, and then donate to the best of your ability, while also taking into account your personal circumstances. And everyone's circumstances are different. Today you might be able to donate this much, tomorrow you can give more. So you have to balance your life as well. You need to be able to put food on the table, so to speak, right? You have a mortgage to pay, maybe kids have to go to school, you have to pay for their education, and after that you just have maybe a little bit left. And maybe if you can't donate, then donate your time. But if you have money to donate, then yeah, we should donate it to the temple and maybe other causes, what you're inspired by. But it's different for everyone. So you have to maturely look at it also. But that's a general answer. And I can't go into specifics because your situation will be different to anyone else. I hope that answers it. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, so Ramanujacharya is one of the great acharyas.
Thank you.
Sorry? Hare Krishna. Yeah. So he's one of the great acharyas coming in the disciplic succession. And he came to gradually bring people back to Krishna consciousness. So he was one of the acharyas who came in the line of acharyas to have that gradual shift to Krishna consciousness. So when Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, the teachings were very prominent, but over time, the teachings got corrupted and lost. And then Lord Buddha came because the Vedas were being exploited for mundane purposes. And Lord Buddha, he rejected the Vedas. And after Lord Buddha, Shankaracharya came, right? So he said, okay, we accept the Vedas, but then he established the monism, right? Impersonalism. And then Madhvacharya came, who Madhvacharya's philosophy was Vishishta Advaita, which is more or less that.
No, that's Ramanujacharya.
Yeah. What was Madhvacharya's?
Dvaita Vishishta.
Yes, and then
He came second after Ramanuja.
he came after Madhvacharya.
Ramanuja.
Madhvacharya came after Ramanuja. So yeah, Ramanujacharya came after Shankaracharya. So Ramanujacharya, my understanding is he established we are the spirit soul, and then there is the Supreme Lord. Am I correct?
Qualified monism.
Qualified monism. So that was his main contribution. And then gradually, we come to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Yeah, you mentioned about the different senses and how the elephant is seeking touch, and we are trapped with all the senses. So there is one very nice verse by Uddhavji in the 11th canto. Tvayo bhukta sri gandha vaso alankara charchita uchishta bhojino dasas tava maya jayemahi. So Uddhavji is saying that Tvayopabhukta Srig, by us enjoying what you've enjoyed already, your Srig, your garland, Tvayopabhukta Srig, Gandha, the incense that has been offered to you, Vaso, the clothes that have been offered to you, Alankar, the ornaments that have been offered to you, and the prasadam, the food that has been offered to you. By us enjoying that, Uchishta Bhojino, Dasas, your servants, Jayemahi, Tava Maya Jayemahi. They win over your Maya. So all the senses can be won over by us in Prasad Buddhi, enjoying what Krishna has already enjoyed.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Prabhu. That's
Hare
correct.
Krishna.
Yes. One second, mic is coming.
My question is that you're saying that we should control our senses. So, but we see great yogis control their senses, and in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna recommends us not to do that yoga that they are doing. He recommends us to do bhakti yoga. Why is it that so?
Why is Krishna recommending to perform bhakti yoga, not engage in what the yogis do?
Yeah.
Okay. Because bhakti yoga is easy to do. That's why. So yoga is very difficult. You have to sit cross-legged long time, and it's very difficult, isn't it, to sit still. So bhakti yoga, Krishna says, it's easy, and you can serve me directly. That's why Krishna recommends bhakti yoga. So yoga is indirect. A yogi is trying to see Paramatma in the heart, whereas in bhakti yoga one can see Krishna directly. And by doing these simple activities of eating prasadam, you like prasadam, right? But by eating prasadam, by playing in the temple, so with your friends, by chanting, coming to class like you're coming, in this way one can go back to Godhead. So it's very easy. That's why Krishna recommends this. And the chance of fall down is also less. Whereas in that, the chance of fall down is very high because one is artificially engaged. One wants to eat nice prasadam, one wants to eat nice food, but they are not eating. So what happens on a fast day? Like when you're trying not to eat.
They get tempted to eat something.
You get tempted to eat, right? Imagine you're doing that all the time. So imagine you're just eating nuts and maybe some fruits all the time. You're on a raw diet all the time. What will happen?
I'll get tempted to eat other stuff.
Yes, and first you'll get tempted, then you'll eat it. So this is what happens to yogis. The yogis, they think I'll be a brahmachari or a sannyasi when they're not meant to be. And then they do that, and they just, there's no fun, it's just boring. And then they come back to material activities. So that's why Krishna doesn't recommend that. He says, do the fun part, and in which you can go back to Godhead. So yeah, it's not boring and it's fun.
Thank you.
Haribo. Yes, Madhavi.
What if someone gets attached to eating prasadam, just eating prasadam, coming to the temple for prasadam? So what happens to them?
Someone gets attached to prasadam, well, that's a good thing. So that way, and you said if they come to temple to eat prasadam, Melbourne temple is Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. It's known in the ISKCON world as a major prasadam temple, amongst other things. So, well, the good thing is they'll keep coming regularly and then get the association of devotees. When they come to temple, then somebody will approach them in due course of time. Prabhu or Mr. or Mrs., we are doing this program, would you like to join us? And then they might go to some program and hear. And if they come to temple, they'll see the deities go to Aarti. In that way, get purified. And if we get addicted to prasadam, that's a good thing, but for devotees, you have to be careful also. You can destroy your health with prasadam also. So you have to eat simply. I know a lot of devotees who have health problems because of eating very opulent prasadam. So yes, eating prasadam is nice, but you have to limit what type of prasadam you eat also. Because if you eat opulent prasadam all the time, your body is going to break down in due course of time. And if you're not exercising enough, if you're not burning it out, and then it's going to break down. So yes, we have to eat prasadam in the beginning. It's a good start to eat prasadam and be addicted to it. But then over time, you have to, as become mature, even in prasadam, you have to limit what you eat. Can you eat healthy prasadam? And then every now and then a feast. If you're eating a feast every day, like Mahaprasadam, it's just a matter of time you'll get sick, and then the service will stop also. Then chanting the rounds becomes difficult. You have cholesterol problems or sugar problems or BP problems. Then everything becomes difficult. The
Prabhu,
bhajan becomes difficult.
Just one more question. Like engaging our senses in Krishna's service, is that different from getting attached to the spiritual activities? Engaging and getting attached?
Yes, and so our nature is to be attached. By nature we'll be attached, so it is just a question of dovetailing the attachment. So yes, we want to be attached to our service. And that is a good thing. And in the higher stages of devotional service, there is also attachment, which leads to prema, eventually. So attachment is a good thing. We should be attached to that garlands we are making, or that bhoga offering we are doing, or the arti we are doing, or the programs we are doing at home. That is a very good sign, and that is a sign of progress. If you're not attached, then we have a problem. We have a spiritual problem. So it's a sign of progress, being attached.
Prabhu, I read somewhere that don't try seeing Krishna, try serving Krishna. What does that exactly mean? Would you please explain it to us?
Yeah, so that means by serving Krishna, we see Krishna. Like you don't go and say, I want to see ScoMo. Can you get audience of ScoMo? Scott Morrison. Or Dan Andrews. Can you say, I want to see him? No, most likely you'll not see him. Even if you go to his secretary, even if you send him an email, his email is publicly available, you're not going to get a response. You might get, but you're not going to get his audience. So the only way to see him is to do something. Either something good or bad. Either you do something really stupid, and then you'll see them, or you do something very good. With stupid thing, you'll probably end up in jail, and then you might see him, or you might hear from him, or you do something really really remarkable and attract their attention, right? Like with these bushfires that happened, there was this group, the Sikh United Front, or whatever they called. They did a lot of food distribution in the bushfire affected zones, and they did large scale, and they came to everyone's attention. There was a whole article in The Age, and Daniel Andrews also, I think, personally thanked them. Even ScoMo also spoke about them. So all these people who were unknown, they became, heroes. So because they did something remarkable. So in this way, when we engage in Krishna service nicely, then we attract the Lord's attention, and then in due course we see Krishna. Then Krishna takes some interest in us and notices us for our tiny contribution, because we are doing something to serve Him. And the best thing to do is to spread His glories. Either do it yourself or help people who are doing it. In one way, be connected. And effectively, that's what the temple is also doing, right? So even if you're doing service at the temple, you're supporting that broader mission of spreading the glories. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.